The Oracle Network. Look deeper.
Welcome to Brew Crime. I'm Mike.
I'm Beck.
And I'm Nina.
All right. Well, this is our holiday episode. So, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. What's some other ones?
Kwanzaa.
Happy Hanukkah. Oh, you already said Hanukkah. Damn it.
There's got to be some more.
Sretan Božić.
Winter solstice.
Yeah, so all of these crimes took place around the holidays or, whatever the case ends up being. So I'm going to start this one out. So I have titled this story as well. One of the holiday's most vile drinks once started a riot. Can you guess which vile drink that is?
Eggnog.
I think you don't like eggnog.
Yes, it is!
I also don't like eggnog.
Oh, that stuff's so fucking gross.
I like eggnog, but I have to half it with milk. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm having a cup, it has to be half eggnog and half milk because it's just too rich.
All right. The holidays have a lot of things going for them. Family, friends, and the revelry often fueled with a big amount of alcohol to spice it up. The United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, was founded in 1802. Today it is known as a very reserved school, and it is very strict. Back in the earlier years, though, it had a reputation for being quite lax, and it had a real problem with drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. Now, alcohol was absolutely banned from the school, and smoking cigarettes could get you in a lot of trouble, but it still happened. At Christmas time, though, they would be allowed to have traditional eggnog with whiskey in it, as it was a very traditional drink for them, just all over the U.S. especially. So in 1826... the superintendent of the school, Colonel Sylvanus, was fed up, and he took a hard stance and said that the eggnog this year would be alcohol-free. To ensure this happened, he would make far more strict rules leading up to Christmas, banning the purchase, storage, and drinking of any alcohol on West Point property. So that's going to go well, right?
Yeah.
It never goes well.
Yeah. So did you really expect these cadets to follow the rules and not enjoy their horrendous eggnog without booze? On December 22nd, I'm going to just keep pushing on that one.
Yeah.
On December 22nd in the evening, 3 cadets would talk the duty security guard into letting them leave the North Barracks and take a boat across the Hudson River with the intentions of buying some whiskey for the Christmas Eve celebration. The plan was to try and get a half gallon of whiskey, but they managed to get 2 gallons of whiskey for North Barracks Room 33 and 1 gallon for North Barracks Room 5.
Wow.
So, I mean, I like the way they work, as 3 gallons is far better than a half gallon.
Yeah.
And then for us Canadians and the rest of the world, 3 gallons of whiskey would be about 11.4 liters of whiskey.
Shit.
That's a lot of whiskey.
Yes, it is.
I was just like, you were aiming for half a gallon, and you got 3, so that's really great. But I didn't actually have a concept of
What that
full
meant.
concept of how much that was.
It's like 11 and a half liters.
So thanks for the conversion on that.
You're welcome.
Also, I thought eggnog had spiced rum in it, not whiskey. But maybe that's...
It not traditionally back then, I guess. I think it is no more traditional now for rum, yeah. I forget what president was. One of the first presidents actually preferred it with rum, whiskey, and a couple other things in it, so...
My God, why bother with the eggnog at that point?
Exactly.
It's all alcohol.
Just drink the booze.
Yeah.
Moving to December 23rd, the daily inspections of the rooms would go on as always, and somehow the cadets managed to hide the fact that they had quite a bit of whiskey hidden on site. So at 5:45 p.m., or 1745, Sylvanus Thayer, the commander of the academy, held a party for his staff where wine was served. Because when did officers have to follow the rules of the academy, right? No alcohol allowed. Here's some wine.
Yeah.
While this was going on, though, the cadets were planning their big shindig and were spending time stealing food from the mess hall for the party the next day.
It's not a party if there isn't snacks.
Oh, exactly. The South Barracks also found out about the party that was going to go on in the North Barracks that night. On December 24th, around 10 p.m., the party started in room 28 with 9 cadets to begin with, but people would come and go as the night went on. Not long after, room 5 would get their party going with 7 cadets to start. Sometime before the clock rolled over to midnight, one of the cadets snuck off across the Hudson again and picked up another gallon of whiskey.
Oh my god.
As the clocks rolled on to 2 a.m., it was beginning to get a little boisterous. Cadet Charles Whipple, the division superintendent for that evening, would barge into room 5 at 2 a.m. and find 8 cadets singing drunkenly.
Just having a good old time.
Yeah. After a confrontation, Whipple would head back to his room. 3 a.m. would roll around, though, and the party was getting louder, so another patrol was done. At 4 a.m., Captain Ethan Allen Hitchcock could hear the noise from a room above his and made his way up to see what the heck was going on in room 28. He would bang on the door and find 6 cadets drunk from their eggnog and 2 others just passed out on a bed. Hitchcock would order 2 of the drunk cadets and the 2 in the bed to head to their rooms at once. Of the 2 cadets left, he would read them the riot act for possessing alcohol, and at 4:15 he would leave the room. So, it's getting worse and worse. It's getting pretty early in the morning now.
Yeah.
Now, both cadets were drunk and furious that their party was broken up. It was their right to be drunk and merry on Christmas Day, after all. These 2 cadets would begin to organize a group to riot against Hitchcock. Between 4:30 a.m. and 6:05 a.m., Hitchcock was trying to sleep, but he would be awoken by knocks on the door on 3 different occasions. I'd just like to know if this was the first instance of Nicky Nicky Nine Doors, because there was no one at the door.
What's that?
That's where you knock on someone's door and run away.
Yeah.
Oh, like ding dong and ditch, or dong and ditch, or...
That's another name for it, yeah.
Before doorbells existed.
Yeah.
Oh, so your guys' time, not mine. Got it.
No.
And actually, it sounds like that tradition did start sometime in the early 1800s, so who knows?
Shenanigans and goings on.
Exactly. So he would obviously get pissed off and get dressed again and head out to find out what the hell was going on. He would follow a cadet back to the party at room 5, this time. He would enter the room and demand that the cadets open their footlockers, but they would all refuse to do so. So sometime again between 4:30 a.m. and 6:05 a.m., there was just kind of, time spans that I could find. Lieutenant William A. Thornton was awoken from a deep sleep by yelling outside his room. When he opened his door, 2 cadets would attack him. One of the 2 cadets was arrested on the spot, and the other ran. He would run right back to room 28 and let them all know of the arrest of one of the revelers.
Wow.
Yeah. At the same time, the South Barracks began to get a little loud with partying too. Thornton would then head towards that noise to figure out what was going on. On the way to the South Barracks, though, he was knocked out by one of the cadets that was kicked out of one of the parties earlier. So it's kind of starting to, pick up a little bit. So at some point in that time, too, cadets would start looking for some drums so they could get that party really going and get loud. By 5 a.m., there were a good number of windows that had been smashed out of the North Barracks. Hitchcock would end up heading back to his room, but cadets would attack his door. One of these cadets would shoot his pistol into the room.
Oh my god.
That was the last straw for Hitchcock, and the cadets were all arrested. And at about the same time, 5 a.m., loud drumming would begin in the North Barracks. Also around this time, some of the sober cadets thought they had heard that the officers were going to break up the party and the drunken riot with heavy weapons, so this sent those sober cadets to grab their weapons and defend the building. By
This
6
is way out of control. Oh my god. What a bunch of morons.
Yeah. By 6 a.m., the rioters were trying to get more cadets to join the riot, but they were having a tough time. 6:05 a.m. had Reveille, I think it's called, or the wake-up call, where the trumpets or whatever go off. But this was met with gunfire, breaking glass, and swearing. There were also people yelling out in pain, and even threats being thrown out at officers that showed their faces. The damage was extensive from the riots. Most of the cadets from the South Barracks made it to the parade formation that morning, while the North Barracks men were either poorly put together because they could not sleep or because they were still drunk.
Yeah, I bet they were.
They had just
You can't
finished
drink
drinking.
until 5 a.m.
Yeah.
and then be ready.
Well, I mean, they were still drinking through the riots and everything, too.
It's just bad news bears
Yeah.
all around.
Still, some said screw it and just stayed in the room and drank the morning away instead of going to the lineup. The riot officially ended at 6:20 a.m. on Christmas morning. In the end, between 70 and 90 cadets took part in the riots that night. To protect the school's reputation, they decided it would be bad to expel a third of the school's students, so they decided to only discipline the worst of the bunch. Jefferson Davis, future president of the Confederacy, and one of the boys that bought the whiskey was able to get away with no charges, as well as famous racist Robbie E. Lee, and they would testify on behalf of their fellow students that were charged. In the end, 6 cadets would resign from the school, 19 would be court-martialed, and 10 would be expelled.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of my sources even said that the damage to the North Barracks was so severe that the building ended up being demolished. So the moral of the story is, do not take away the whiskey, as it is the only way the eggnog can be choked down. That's my story.
I thought you were going to say the moral is don't drink eggnog, because I know you hate it.
Yeah, but it was, it was them trying to stop them from drinking whiskey that made this all happen.
Yep.
So that's my case.
Wow.
Another reason not to drink eggnog. Perfect.
Yes,
No
exactly.
thanks.
Just whiskey. Skip the eggnog. It's gross. Before we get you to our next case, we would like to ask for your help. Next time you open your podcast app, drop us a 5-star review. iTunes and Apple Podcasts especially recommend shows to their users when they get new positive reviews. And with your help, Brew Crime can spread to even more listeners. Regardless of your app, though, please rate and review and share our podcast with your friends, as the more people that hear our show, the more we can grow the show. Here are a few reviews we have been left. From Craft Beer. Check this show out. It's a great mix of smart content that is also funny. And I love craft beer. And then we got one from Page87. Amazing podcast. I'm hooked. 5 stars. And we got the Fat, Drunk, and Stupid podcast. A 5-star review. Awesome show. Great chemistry. And of course beer. Y'all keep up the good work. Rob. Leave us a review and maybe we'll read yours on here. Back to it.
The title I chose for my story today is The Ultimate Christmas Cookie Sugar Crash. Klaus von Bülow was a Danish-born British lawyer with noble heritage.
Sorry, his name is Klaus?
Klaus, yep.
Like Santa Claus?
That's Claus.
Claus.
It depends how you say it. Depends what your dialect is. I like it. Okay, sorry. I was like, this is a great Christmas story already. I'm digging it.
Yeah, I'm happy. So Klaus had decided to go by his mother's maiden name of von Bülow instead of his father's surname, Borberg. And this may be because his father was remembered as a Nazi collaborator for his activities during the Second World War during the German occupation of Denmark.
Yeah, that'd be a good reason.
I don't know that that's the reason that he decided to change his name, but it just seems like a really good reason to change your name. So that's what I'm going with.
I would change my last name if that was the case.
Yeah. On June 6th, 1966, Klaus married Sunny. She was an American and the ex-wife of Prince Alfred von Auersperg. She was born Martha Sharp Crawford and nicknamed Sunny as a child because of her sunny disposition.
Aw.
Oh.
The names so far are pretty winning.
Yes, very unique. She was the only child of George Crawford and Annie Laurie Warmack. George was the former chairman of Columbia Gas and Electric Company, and Annie's father was the founder of the International Shoe Company. So to say that Sunny grew up rich is a massive understatement. When she was 3, her father passed away, and her part of the inheritance was $100 million.
At that time?
That was in 1935. So today, that's about $1.9 billion.
Oh,
And she was 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was a billionaire
That's
as
incredible.
a toddler.
It's the problem I wish I had.
Yeah. So
I don't even know what I'd do with all of that money. Have you ever had that theory of like if you won $1 million, like a jackpot, like the lotto, the first thing you'd go and buy? I literally think the first thing I'd go buy is just like a Big Mac meal and just sit down and think about my decisions. Like, I think I'd just be in such shock. I'd be like, I can't be trusted with this. I just need to eat some junk food and think about it.
If I won $1 million, I would get a mortgage.
Yeah.
Get a mortgage because you wouldn't be able to pay one off.
Exactly.
Fact.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would do. I'd pay off our mortgage. Yeah, so needless to say, money not a concern for this couple. So they each had socialite listed under occupation when I was doing this research. So, yuck.
Oh, wow.
That's ridiculous. So Sunny had a daughter, Princess Annie Laurie von Auersberg, born in 1958, and a son, Prince Alexander George Auersberg, born 1959, from her first marriage. And on April 15th, 1967, Sunny and Klaus had a daughter named Cosima von Bülow. But by 1979, their marriage was deteriorating. Klaus would later say that Sunny had a drinking and a drug habit. Klaus had numerous affairs, including an ongoing relationship with actress Alexandra Motley-Isles. It's Motlke. Motley? I don't know.
No idea.
She was from the soap opera Dark Shadows. Do you guys know that one?
I've heard of it, I think, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So both Sunny and Klaus had begun to speak openly about the possibility of divorce. The family came together for Christmas that year at their Newport, Rhode Island mansion, Clarendon Court, like you do, at the mansion. On December 26th, Sunny was found unresponsive, so she was rushed to hospital. She slipped into a coma but was revived. A battery of tests were performed over the following days, and it was determined that she was hypoglycemic, and the coma was because of low blood sugar. So she was advised to be more careful with what and when she ate, and at the time no one suspected anything malicious, but that wouldn't last long. In April 1980, a similar event took place. She didn't lose consciousness this time, but she was disoriented and incoherent. Her doctors were sure that this was caused by her hypoglycemia and reiterated their previous advice, adding no alcohol to the list. So, like, no sugar, no alcohol, eat meals regularly. I would fail at this.
Yeah, no, that sounds like hell.
So the fam was back together at Clarendon Court to celebrate Christmas 1980, and once again, Sunny became disoriented and incoherent. She was put to bed to rest for the night, but when they went to check on her in the morning, she was unconscious on the bathroom floor. She was once again rushed to the hospital, but this occurrence was much more severe than the others. Her brain had been injured enough to cause a vegetative state.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Because of the strained relationship between their mother and stepfather, Sunny's 2 eldest children convinced former New York County District Attorney Richard H. Koo to investigate foul play. Evidence was gathered and presented to a grand jury. In July 1981, they voted to indict Klaus on 2 counts of attempted murder. The trial began in February 1982. The prosecution said the motive was the $21 million that Klaus stood to gain from Sonny's will, as well as he'd then have the freedom to marry his mistress. A divorce would have left him with nothing, because that's what he signed for. Many of the household staff testified to seeing a black bag with drugs and a used syringe. This black bag was found in Klaus's closet, and the syringe was reported to contain traces of insulin, which is basically the opposite of what someone with hypoglycemia would want. The prosecution presented a blood test showing that Sonny's insulin levels were very high. Harvard endocrinologist George Cahill testified that he was convinced that her brain damage was the result of injected insulin. There was plenty of evidence that Sonny excessively used sedatives, vitamins, and other drugs. In spite of this, Klaus was convicted and sentenced to 30 years. Klaus filed for an appeal and convinced Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz to represent him. Technically, Alan was part of a large team that included some of his students, and the team was actually led by Thomas Puccio, but you basically never hear about Thomas because Alan is a pretty famous, or more accurately these days infamous, but that's a whole other story. The team's main focus for their appeal was the discovery of the black bag and its contents. As it turns out, the chain of custody on the black bag was pretty much non-existent. So Sonny's family had hired a private investigator, Edwin Lambert, to look into her coma. And he was an associate of Richard Koo. So several family members, as well as Sonny's personal maid, told Edwin that Klaus had recently been locking one of the closet doors at Clarendon Court, and that until recently it had always been just left unlocked. So the family hired a locksmith to pick the lock and see what was in the closet, like what was he trying to hide, right? Except to do this, they had to lie to the locksmith and tell him that one of them owned the house, because otherwise, you're not allowed to do that, obviously. To his credit, the locksmith still advised them that it would be best if they tried harder to find the lost key before he opened it. So after some searching, Richard Koo found the key in Klaus's desk. Big search, did you even try to look for it before hiring someone to break into it? According to the original interviews, the locksmith left before the closet was opened, and this was later recanted, and it was then said that the locksmith was present when they entered the closet. The bag was found in this closet by 2 people who were the most keen to see Klaus behind bars, and it's just
Raises a lot of...
with no other witnesses. It's a bit too convenient and sketchy, you know what I mean? You're the ones that want him in jail most, and you just happen to find the key piece of evidence that makes that happen?
Yeah, that's suspicious.
AF.
So the Court of Appeal ordered a retrial, which was set to begin April 25th, 1985. They also ruled that the Auersberg attorney had to turn over the notes from the first trial. So these notes showed that Klaus didn't want to terminate life support for Sonny, which is something that the Auersberg children had been claiming he was pressuring them to do, and it was just bullshit. It was also revealed that the test that showed high levels of insulin in Sonny's system was only one of 4 blood tests that had been performed that night, and it was the only one that showed high levels of insulin. One of the 4 tests even showed that there was no insulin. So, fine to present the one test that showed high insulin, but you have to present all of them or none of them.
Withholding.
Exactly. So the clearer version of where the black bag evidence came from was a game changer for the defense. The defense also presented 8 medical experts who testified that Sonny's comas were caused by alcohol, chronic health conditions, and ingested, not injected, insulin. Or drugs, sorry, not insulin. So, like, because she took sleeping pills and stuff like that. So that's what it was really from. One medical expert testified that the syringe had insulin on the outside, but there was none on the inside. So this suggests that the syringe was found and then dipped in insulin, so it would look like it had traces of insulin, but actually it had never been used for insulin. The defense also showed that when Sunny was in the hospital 3 weeks before her final coma, her tests showed that she had ingested 73 tablets of aspirin.
Holy shit.
They suggested this showed her state of mind at the time. So George Cahill recanted his testimony from the first trial and said that while he was sure that insulin was the most reasonable explanation for Sunny's coma, he admitted that, quote, neither he nor anyone else could ever be 100% certain of the cause of the comas, end quote. On June 10th, 1985, Klaus von Bülow was acquitted on all counts. Klaus's biological daughter, Cosima, was convinced of his innocence the whole time. Acquitted or not, Sunny's family was convinced that Klaus was guilty, and they were pissed that Cosima didn't agree. So Sunny's mother had disinherited Cosima back in 1981 because of this, because she felt that Cosima was betraying the family. The grandmother passed away on May 4th, 1984, and Cosima didn't receive anything. 10 days after Klaus was acquitted, the Auersberg children filed a $56 million civil lawsuit against him on their mother's behalf. After 2.5 years, it was settled out of court. Klaus agreed to divorce Sunny, give up all claims to her fortune, and leave the country, as long as Cosima received what would have been her 1/3 share of her grandmother's estate. So her 1/3 share was $30 million.
Wow.
That's crazy. So Klaus moved to Knightsbridge, London, where he wrote opera and theater reviews for The Spectator and the Catholic Herald. And he remained very social, and people treated him as if nothing had ever changed. But everything had changed for Sunny, obviously. She lived in that coma for nearly 28 more years.
Jeez.
And she passed December 6th, 2008 from cardiopulmonary arrest at Mary Manning Walsh Nursing Home in New York City. She was 76. That whole time that she was in a coma, her hairdresser visited her twice a week to touch up her hair and reapply her makeup. 28 years, twice a week.
Jeez.
I couldn't believe that. So I was very surprised to find out that Klaus just died May 25th of last year.
Wow.
How old was he?
So, yeah, he was 92. During the last episode, Nina, you had mentioned a series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
And there's characters in that show named after these two. There's a married couple named Klaus and Sunny. Or there's
Sunny
Klaus and Sunny.
The
baby.
Jeez.
The kids, right?
Yeah.
So that's these two. Those names are based on these two.
What a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's my case. And a quick thanks to Mr. Rowe, my grade 10 law teacher, for making us watch the 1990 film Reversal of Fortune. The movie is based on Alan Dershowitz's book that is about this case. And I remember the movie being good. I haven't seen it since then, which was like a century ago. But Glenn Close played Sunny, and Jeremy Irons played Klaus. And Jeremy Irons got an Academy Award for Best Actor. So it was a good movie.
Must have been pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. That's my case.
Wow.
Wow. And how rich were they?
Oh my gosh.
3-year-old with that much. I mean, obviously, all of them have a lot of money, but as a 3-year-old, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have no concept of what that means.
Yeah. Well, there's this scene in the movie, and they're having this outrageously fancy luncheon party out on the lawn. This was when Sunny was still married to the prince, like her first marriage. And one of her pets gets loose and comes over, and everyone's like comes over to where people are eating. It's a fucking tiger. Like a cub. And it just like goes over to her and just wants to like be hand fed. Because that's the thing when you're rich, right? It's so weird. But yeah.
Yeah, it's either the ultra rich or it's like really poor people in the South that have a bunch of wild cats.
My gator. Oh, you're talking about the Tiger King.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I forgot to mention my pairing at the beginning of the story. So, like the last episode, because, spoiler, we record 2 of these at once, so this is actually the same day. I didn't have a pairing, so I got this bottle of wine that's called Oops. Because, yep, it seemed fitting.
It works.
And yeah. Spicy Splendor. That's what it says on the bottle. That's my case and my bottle of wine.
Wonderbar. Oops is right.
Next.
My story is pretty short. Not the brightest criminal. Caught very, very quickly. But nonetheless, I think she's a sack of shit. And yeah. So for my...
Hey, why don't you tell us how you really feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she... Anyways, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I just think she's a piece of shit. So anyways, before I get to talk about poop, I'm going to talk about beer.
Woohoo!
So for my pairing, I picked a seasonal beer. It's from Tree Brewing. I believe it is actually also a local brewery in Vancouver.
It's in Kelowna, isn't it? Tree?
It's now owned by Big Rock, and they're brewing it out of Vancouver at the Big Rock Brewery there.
Yeah, I was going to say it says Vancouver, BC on the can. And it's essentially a vertical winter ale. It's a pretty can, 5% alcohol, 473 ml, and beer with vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And there really isn't any like description on it. Just says limited edition. It's a pretty can.
I've had that in the past. Pretty sweet, if I remember right.
How have you had it in the past if it's limited edition?
Well, it's a seasonal every year.
It's not a first
No,
edition.
yeah.
Got it. Okay, whatever. You're right, Emma. Let's try it. Smells like beer.
I hope you like it.
It's not that bad.
Nice. Is it strongly vanilla?
It tastes like what like a superstore version of vanilla would taste like. Like an off-brand vanilla.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's the best you guys are going to get out of me for that one. So there's that. But mind you, I guess also what the listeners don't realize, we usually have like a side drink that we drink between our pairing drinks. And for whatever stupid reason, which I'll explain later when we record my pint size of crime, I'm drinking fucking soju, which doesn't go with any of this. So maybe that's also potentially why this beer doesn't taste great, because I'm mixing it with like green apple vodka, essentially. So,
Oof.
Yeah, let's get into my story. Nothing too exciting about it. It's just a shitty person that did something to a nice person, which I know are what are most of our stories like anyways. So I'm just going to get into it. So I'm going to be talking about Patty Michelle White and Michelle O'Dowd. The spelling of Michelle's last name is O''Dowd. Essentially, they met through family. They befriended each other. There was quite an age gap. Michelle was 67 and Patty was 37.
Wow.
Yeah, so Michelle actually ended up inviting Patty to live with her for a little while. It looks like that Patty was going through a tough time and kind of down on her luck, and Michelle was just trying to help her out. You know, she lives in a house by herself. She thinks she has a dog. Just come stay here. Keeps her company as well, and obviously being a little elderly, someone to kind of help keep the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially the story, as I mentioned, it's kind of just shitty, is long story short, but I'll kind of talk about the long story short. Patty ended up murdering Michelle.
Oh.
Yeah. And it sucks because this is a woman who literally brought you into her house to help you and, you know, down on your luck and all of that. And then you turn out to just be a sack of shit. So on December 2nd in 2011, to be completely honest, it's uncertain what happened because there's only the two of them in the house. And essentially Patty's just not saying anything. Michelle sometimes gave Patty money also, and money for like doing jobs around the house, or if she needed something for appointments, for fixing her car, whatever. She'd lend her some money just as like a nice gesture, whatever. I definitely didn't find anything where there was like an assumption that Patty had to pay this back, or like just a generous woman helping someone else out. And by no means did Michelle have money or anything. She just was able to assist someone.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. The assumption is that they got into some type of argument, and essentially it went from bad to worse. Patty ended up beating up Michelle and strangling her. Now, in an effort to hide her, what she did was just awful. She actually made space under the Christmas tree that had family's presents already under it, moved the presents out, wrapped the body, hid the body under the Christmas tree, and then moved all the presents back around the tree to just cover her dead body laying there.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So...
What about, like, the smell?
Yeah, as I said, not smart. I also couldn't find if it was a real pine tree, so maybe she thought that was going to help with the scent. I don't know. Patty was just not a good person. Michelle, of course, didn't make it to work. She was still working at her age, and that was very unusual for her. So her work actually contacted her twin brother, and her twin brother went to the house to, of course, check on her. This is unusual behavior. He walked into the door. He did notice that the house seemed to be like ransacked, so some kind of burglary happened. And like tables, chairs flipped upside down. So obviously some kind of commotion. Yeah. And he's looking around. He can't find his sister. So he's looking, and he ended up actually just seeing part of her foot sticking out from under the tree. And obviously immediately there, he was just like, holy shit. Yeah. Called the police, and it was the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office came and obviously found her body. They noticed that her debit cards and things were missing. So does not look good. Out here, obviously now you got to see, is someone using her debit cards? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, Patty was not smart. She actually withdrew $1,000 at 2 different ATMs with the credit card. So, of course, the ATMs actually had cameras on them. So it looks like she was trying to kind of disguise herself when the police showed the family the footage, because the family knew of Patty, of course. They were easily able to be like, that's Patty. So
did she have those like glasses with the nose and the mustache attached?
I don't even think she was smart enough to do that.
That'd be good though, yeah.
It would be good, but no. So obviously they put out a warrant to try to find her, and a police officer actually ended up pulling over Patty's mother, and Patty was in the passenger seat. So Patty subsequently was arrested, of course. Something I found really sad is some of the cops asked, did she try to steal the debit cards and then wrestle with Michelle to find out the PIN numbers? And she said, no, Michelle actually entrusted her with the PIN numbers because sometimes she would go buy groceries for them and it's just easier so she doesn't have to go. She trusts Patty to just know the PIN numbers. I found that really sad.
Yeah, that is really sad.
Yes. So, of course, Patty was arrested. She ended up taking a plea deal for second-degree murder and is currently sentenced to 45 years in prison.
It's not long enough.
Nah, that's my story.
But, like, no explanation on that.
Nope.
That's-
So, assuming that, and these are all assumptions, essentially Patty didn't say what, they had disagreement. There's like some assumptions that, Michelle was like over taking care of her and that she, didn't feel appreciated, blah, 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 and all of that, but just didn't say anything.
That's just something else.
And as for like trying to hide her under the tree and put presents around her body, it's just fucked up. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if she watched even 2 episodes of Forensic Files, like that is just not the way to do it.
Yep.
Obviously, I can't assume that this woman had, she's just an idiot. But regardless of that, it's just really disappointing when someone's going out of their way to help you, get you back on your feet and all of that. And then this is what ends up happening. So obviously, not to say that always happens, but as an extreme case, yeah, that's my story.
It's a terrible story.
Yeah.
Like they all are.
They all are. It just doesn't feel good because it's literally just an old elderly woman. She, as I mentioned, Michelle also had a dog that was living with her, pets. And yeah, she just left the pets there. So she didn't hurt the pets, just let them roam around the house. I'm assuming she's like, someone was obviously going to come check for her to see where she is and that they find the dogs and all that. So I don't know. I think it's just like basic disregard for like human life or any life other than hers.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And that's all she wrote.
All right, then. Well, thanks for tuning in. We're going to take a bit of a break after this episode. I think we're taking a month off recording. Is that right?
Yeah, a little holiday break.
A little holiday break. So we'll be back a month after this episode.
Gonna unwind after 2020 and then start you guys off in 2021 with best crimes of 2020 to recap this incredible year. And I say credible lightly.
Exactly.
And best in air quotes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best of the worst.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. You can find us at brewcrime.com. If you want to send us a message, recommend case types or themes or whatever, you can send us an email at brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. You can find us on all social media at brewcrime. If you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/brewcrime. We use the money to pay for hosting and help upgrade our equipment and just make the show better. So shout out to our supporters: True Crime Nana, Daniela, Ange, Nina's Mom, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, and the Faves Over Lives Podcast. Cheers and happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design was by Ben Greenberg. All cases and stories were written by Beck, Nina, and Mike, and our sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. We can also be found on your favorite podcast apps, our hosts, Spreaker.com, or BrewCrime.com, as well as at BrewCrime on Twitter, at BrewCrime on Facebook, at Facebook.com/groups/BrewCrime. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Pacific Beer Chat.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariel Cooksey, host of Malice. When violent acts occur, we tend to think the predators are monsters. Surely no human could do such things. But if we're honest, only humans commit malicious crime. And if you're like me, you want to know why. To find out, join me at Malice, wherever you listen to podcasts. Bye.
What
Let's
he
see.
said.
Think we're gonna have to do that again, or we're gonna be.
Oh, no,
offensive?
I'll just splice it.
Can you hear that?
Yep. What? Say something? Not long after, room 4 would get into the... Oh, no, sorry. Room 5. All right. Who's next?
I think Beck was going next.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I just need some water.
No worries.
Klaus filed for sorry, my screen went crazy for a sec. Yeah. So, last
Or really poor in the South US.
unimaginably wealthy. What was that, Mike?
I suddenly feel very poor.
So, the title I chose for my case today is The Ultimate Crispy... Nope.